At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. In the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name's Aurum. Let's begin. The day humanity decided to fish for a god, they threw a beach party. Under a sky stained a sickly ochre, the Atlantic Ocean went mad. The chaos originated below, a violence born of the deep. Rhythmic, high-frequency tectonic displacements vibrated the entire water column, a pulse from something stirring in the planet's crust. The seabed became a drum skin, producing a procession of unnaturally perfect, monstrous swells. On the Florida coast, where tourists usually littered the sand, only 4 figures dared the shoreline. 2 were in the water. Sergeant Tara Tank O'Donnell carved a clean, powerful line down a 20-foot monster's face, her movements brutally spare. Pilot Jason Kim, conversely, embodied flair. He launched his board off an identical wave's crest, twisting in a move that spat at physics and common sense. His wild laugh carried over the sea's unnatural roar. On the shore, Commander Farah Laney Keaton stood with her boots planted in the wet sand, her expression holding the calm of someone timing laps at a public pool. She held a datapad, her thumb tapping the screen with each wave's interval. Beside her, Dr. Malik Anwar was ankle-deep in the roiling foam, adjusting a sensor buoy with the frantic energy of a bomb squad technician using chopsticks. High above, on a sterile observation deck jutting from a monolithic bunker, Ambassador Xavian of the Rhinari watched with his entire species' capacity for horror. His slender, gray-skinned frame was rigid, his 3-fingered hands clenched into fists. The air hummed, a high-pitched keen from the atmospheric purifiers working at maximum capacity. To Xavian and his people, saltwater was a different substance entirely. A hyper-corrosive acid, a fluid so lethal their scriptures used the word ocean interchangeably with hell. A red light flashed on a nearby control panel. The high-pitched hum of the purifiers grew strained, then sputtered. An acolyte named Nyala rushed to the panel, her silvery robes whispering over the sterile floor.
Ambassador, the aerolized sodium chloride content exceeds filtration capacity. The primary catalysts corrode. Atmospheric integrity fails.
As she spoke, a vent overhead hissed. It released a fine, misty spray that carried the sharp scent of superheated ceramic and toasted dust instead of the station's scrubbed, sterile atmosphere. The mist touched the polished chrome railing near the window, and the metal bloomed instantly with a pattern of black, spiderwebbing decay. One of the Rhinari honor guards gasped, stumbling back and shielding his face with a gauntleted arm. Xavian held his ground, his large black eyes fixed on the humans below, these creatures who frolicked in a planetary ocean of acid that was eating his billion-credit observation post from the inside out. Through his translator, his voice crackled, thin and stretched with disbelief.
Humans swim in that. That is corrosive death. The holy brine that unburdens the flesh from the soul. It will unmake you.
Down on the beach, Jason rode the last dregs of a wave to shore, bailed at the last second, and popped up from the foam like a cork. He shook the water from his black hair, droplets flying, and grinned up at the observation deck, shielding his eyes with one hand. "Unmake me? Xavian, buddy," he yelled, his voice carrying on the strange wind. "We call this shore leave." Just as the words left his lips, the ground beneath them shuddered. The shudder was less a tremor than a groan, a deep, resonant thrum that vibrated up through their feet and into their bones. The sound of a continent-wide prison door grinding on its hinges. Laney's calm sharpened into command. Her gaze snapped from her datapad to the 2 surfers. "Show's about to start. Get out of the water, now! The show's pre-production meeting convened in a hardened military bunker 300 feet beneath the Florida bedrock, in a circular room that smelled of the sterile bite of ionized air. Ambassador Xavian stood at the head of a table, surrounded by the planet's most powerful military leaders and brightest scientific minds. His holographic display painted the air with apocalyptic imagery, worlds cracking apart, stars extinguished, all drawn from the direst cantos of his people's sacred text.
For 10 millennia, the great devourer has slept,
Xavian intoned, his voice resonating with the somber gravity of a priest delivering a eulogy for a world still living.
The precursors, whom you have only just discovered, bound it within your world's ocean. They chose your world as a cage, a tomb. They intended it as a prison, a mercy to the galaxy, never a cradle for life.
He gestured to the swirling, terrifying holograms.
Our sensors detected the precursor binding's failure a month ago. An event our prophets foretold millennia away is now upon you. The tides are its breath. The tectonic shifts are its stirring. You face a force of cosmic nature, a god of chaos and unmaking. Your only rational course, your only chance for your people's survival is to flee. Abandon these shores, take to your stars, and pray it overlooks your escape.
General Garrick Shaw, the grizzled head of the Global Defense Coalition, chewed on an unlit cigar, his expression unmoved.
Where would you have us go, Ambassador? Your people made it quite clear you declined to offer ferry services. Our vessel's purpose is observation, a mission of witness, never salvation,
Xavian said, a hint of pity in his tone.
We came to witness the prophecy's fulfillment, to learn from your end.
Farah Keaton stepped forward and tapped a command into the table's control surface. Xavian's hologram of cosmic doom flickered and vanished, replaced by a crisp, detailed 3D map of the Bermuda Triangle's seabed.
We appreciate your concern, Ambassador, and your theological perspective is noted,
she said, her voice cool and steady as a ship's gyro.
But humanity has a standing policy for problems like this. We solve them.
She nodded to Malik, who jolted as if tasered, then scurried to her side, clutching a stylus like a holy relic. He jabbed it at the map, highlighting 6 massive, newly installed structures.
The Rhinari are correct about one thing,
Malik said, his words tumbling out in a nervous rush.
The Leviathan is a source of unimaginable power. Its movements displace trillions of tons of water, generating kinetic energy on a scale we can barely measure. Its very presence warps local space-time, creating gravitational distortions that ripple through the planet.
He took a shaky breath.
And we're going to steal it.
He tapped the stylus, and the simulation began. Lines of brilliant blue energy flowed from the thrashing, chaotic ocean on the map, converging on the 6 structures.
These are our kinetic siphon arrays. Think of them as the biggest hydroelectric turbines ever conceived. They'll convert the Leviathan's tantrum into raw, usable power, more than enough to power this.
The map zoomed out, revealing a massive, circular device floating on the surface directly above the siphons.
The Mark IV wormhole generator. UN Deep Space Project we've repurposed. It requires an astronomical amount of energy just to prime.
Malik's nervous energy vanished, replaced by the raw delight of a pyromaniac with a new flamethrower.
The siphons will hold the gate open, but the Leviathan's own massive gravity well will drag it through. We only need to hold the door open long enough for its own mass to do the rest. Its rage fuels its own eviction.
Xavian stared, his elegant jaw hanging slightly agape.
A cage? You intend to move it? Where? To what unfortunate star system will you bestow this curse?
Oh, its destination is far from any star system, Malik said cheerfully. The portal leads to a less than hospitable place. We're punching a one-way ticket to a terminal pocket dimension, an empty, decaying universe our cosmologists designated Epsilon 902, a cosmic dead end, a universe of cold, dark quiet, a pocket of absolute nothing. We're erasing the problem, taking it out with the trash.
The room fell silent, the only sound the faint hum of life support. Xavian's composure, the carefully constructed edifice of millennia of religious dogma, finally shattered.
You would strike a god, he whispered, his voice trembling. You would harness its divine fury to power your own machine. You speak of unmaking entire universes as if tidying a room. This transcends hubris. This is madness. The ultimate blasphemy.
General Shaw finally took the cigar from his mouth and pointed its wet end at the alien ambassador.
Ambassador, what you call blasphemy, we call survival.
He turned his gaze to Laney, his eyes flat and gray as battleship plating.
Commander Keaton, your mission is a go. Take your team and go fishing.
That evening, the team held a final cookout on the same beach, a small, defiant circle of light and warmth against a world sliding into chaos. The sky had deepened to a permanent, unsettling twilight, and the distant waves crashed with the sound of rolling artillery. Portable floodlights pushed back the gloom, illuminating a circle of sand where Tank, with surprising finesse, grilled freshly caught redfish over a charcoal fire. The rich smell of barbecue sauce and chili powder cut through the sharp, metallic scent of the salt-heavy air. The scene was a collage of last moments. Tank, finished with the grill, systematically arm-wrestled a line of burly Marines from the base's security detail. She won each match without a change in her stoic expression, her victories punctuated only by the quiet grunt and the soft thud of another man's knuckles on the portable table. Jason had a drone buzzing in the air, a bright little firefly against the bruised sky. And this, his voice narrated from a speaker on the drone, is the official pre-mission briefing of Operation Big Fish. As you can see, tactical preparations are at a critical stage. The drone's camera swooped to frame Malik, who attempted to teach a stray dog how to shake hands, only to have it steal his hot dog bun instead. Our lead scientist is currently engaged in high-level negotiations with local assets. Morale is high. Propped against a cooler, a large, ruggedized tablet streamed a global news feed. The feed showed a global celebration, a planetary festival, anything but panic and fear. Split-screen images showed people on coastlines from Japan to Chile, from Norway to South Africa. They had lit massive bonfires that burned like new constellations on the darkened shores. They launched fireworks that exploded in defiant bursts of color over the turbulent seas. In pubs in Ireland, on rooftops in Rio, in public squares in Seoul, people raised glasses in a synchronized, planet-wide toast to the team in Florida. A global message, broadcast in 100 languages but with a single, unified meaning. We go with defiance. We face the dark. Make the old gods learn new fears. Laney stood with her back to the fire, a bottle of beer in her hand, watching the newsfeed with a small, proud smile. Her gaze kept drifting from the tablet to the dark, turbulent ocean, her eyes tracking the rhythm of the waves, memorizing the cadence of the chaos she was about to enter. Hovering silently above the dunes in his shielded transport, Xavian observed it all. He watched the stoic woman win contests of strength. He watched the pilot document his own potential demise with sarcastic glee. He watched the scientist failed to secure a simple bread roll. He watched them all feast and laugh in the face of their apocalypse. Then he watched the images on their screen, the entire world joining their defiant festival. He turned to his aide, Nyala, who stared at the feed with wide, uncomprehending eyes.
"They know what comes,"
Zavian whispered, his voice a thread of confusion.
"They know the Devourer awakens, yet they feast. Their entire world feasts with them. They have abandoned prayer for feasts and flight for cheers."
He cycled through concepts in his own language. Spiritual mania, collective psychosis, terminal joy, none fit.
What are these creatures?
Nyala could only shake her head, her own rigid faith feeling as brittle as ancient parchment. The Odyssey was less a ship and more a semi-submersible platform, a brutalist wedge of steel and composites designed to survive weather that would tear a normal aircraft carrier in half. It cut through the Bermuda Triangle's monstrous swells, its decks constantly awash with churning green water. On the bridge, the beach party's mood had evaporated. In its place was a quiet, sharp-edged readiness. The 4 members of Laney's team were strapped into crash couches, the glow of their consoles reflected in their eyes.
"All right, Malik, status report on the party favors,"
Laney said, her voice calm and clear over the ship's internal comm.
"Deploying now."
Malik replied from his engineering station. His earlier nervousness was gone, replaced by the laser focus he found only when interacting with his machines. Deep within the Odyssey's cavernous moon pool, massive cranes groaned under an immense load. One by one, 6 kinetic siphon arrays were released. Each was the size of a skyscraper, a behemoth of advanced alloys that plunged into the dark abyss. Their deployment was a series of deafening concussions that reverberated through the Odyssey's hull like the footsteps of a giant. On Malik's screen, 6 green icons tracked their descent.
"Siphons 1 through 6 are green, sinking on target. Anchoring sequence initiated."
He watched the data stream, his fingers keying in commands in swift bursts.
"Drills engaged. They're biting into the continental shelf. Solid rock. Anchors are locked. All 6 siphons are stable and online."
He zoomed in on a schematic of one siphon, highlighting a series of coiled cables near its top.
"Maintenance tethers spooled and ready for repurposing on your command, Laney. We're ready to collect."
Jason leaned back in his pilot's chair, cracking his knuckles.
"Let's hope the big guy's thirsty."
Then the world broke. A colossal seismic event, an earthquake that dwarfed any previously recorded in human history, erupted from the seabed directly beneath them. The Odyssey was thrown upwards and sideways like a toy in a bathtub. On the bridge, every crew member slammed against their harness restraints. Red lights flashed across every console. A klaxon shrieked, a piercing, electronic scream of panic. Malik yelled, a manic grin plastered across his face as his console lit up like a Christmas tree from hell.
"It's awake! Tectonic displacement is... I lack a scale for this! Laney, the siphons, they're spooling up! The kinetic energy conversion is at 120% of my wildest projections!"
He laughed, a wild, unhinged sound of scientific triumph.
"The generator's primed! We have enough juice to crack the door open!"
Before anyone could respond, a new alarm joined the chorus, this one from the surface sonar. "Massive water displacement, bearing 090, distance 1 mile!" The ship's tactical officer called out. Everyone looked at the main view screen. The ocean's surface bulged upwards. The dome of water was the size of a mountain, a smooth, alien curve against the angry sky. It held there for a terrifying, silent moment. Then it broke. A single, city-sized tentacle, covered in interlocking plates that shifted from black to oil-slick colors, tore through the surface. It rose higher and higher still, blotting out the twilight sky.
before it crashed down with an asteroid's force. The sound was a concussion that cracked the armored glass of the bridge view screen. It sent a tsunami-scale wave racing directly towards the Odyssey.
Hold on!
Lainey shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. The wave hit them. The world became a maelstrom of white water and screaming metal. Deep in the Odyssey's belly, the submersible Manta dropped from its launch clamps into the moon pool's relative calm. Inside its cramped cockpit, the surface chaos was reduced to a muffled roar and the gentle rocking of the water. Lainey, Jason, and Tank were strapped into their respective stations, the interior filled with the cool blue glow of holographic displays. Their mission, simple in concept and suicidal in practice: get the Leviathan's attention and kite it 20 miles to the wormhole's target zone. They were the bait.
All right, Jason, time to go annoy a god,
Lainey said, her voice perfectly level as she cinched the last buckle on her harness.
Oh, my specialty,
he replied, his hands moving over the flight controls, his touch light and confident, a cocky grin firmly in place.
Just for the record, my contract excludes divine smiting. That's overtime.
Noted.
Tank grunted from the weapons station behind him, her own massive hands methodically cycling through diagnostics for the external ordnance.
If you get smote, I'll file the paperwork.
With a hiss of compressed air, the moon pool doors opened to the abyss. Jason eased the Manta forward, out from under the Odyssey's relative safety and into the deep, dark water.
Okay, Lainey, do we knock or just ring the doorbell and run?
Let's ring the bell,
Lainey ordered.
Malik, you're up. Activate the lure.
From his station on the Odyssey, Malik initiated the sequence. The Manta began to vibrate, a low-frequency hum that resonated deep in their chests. A powerful seismic emitter broadcast a pulse that mimicked the distress call of a sperm whale, amplified 1,000 times. A call of a colossal creature in its death throes. For a tense minute, the abyss was silent. The sonar display remained blank, save for the faint outline of the sea floor thousands of feet below. Then, the display flooded. The screen filled, displaying something beyond a mere blip or contact. A shape so vast, its geometry so alien, that the sub's computer struggled to render it. It was a fractal of overlapping signatures, a being that occupied more than 3 dimensions of space. Jason whistled, low and long.
Wow, that's a big fish.
Lainey's eyes were locked on the sonar reading. A ghost of a smile touched her lips.
Fish on,
she said softly. Before Jason could slam the thrusters to full, Lainey held up a hand.
Hold position, full floodlights.
Jason's head whipped around.
Commander, have you lost your mind? We're the bait. The main course comes later.
It needs to see us, Jason,
she said, her voice leaving no room for argument.
Let it know we're here. Let it know this is personal.
You want to make this personal with a thing that eats planets for breakfast?
He muttered, but his fingers obeyed, flipping the switches. Banks of powerful lights, designed to pierce the abyssal dark, blazed to life. Beams of white cut through the murky water, illuminating a surface of intricate, shifting patterns. The surface was neither skin nor scales. It looked like a living kaleidoscope of polished jet and pearl, colors shifting and flowing in hypnotic, non-Euclidean patterns. The light traveled across the vast surface for what felt like an eternity, and then it found the eye. It was the size of a football stadium, an orb of deep, liquid sapphire with a pupil like a sliver of absolute nothingness. The gaze went beyond mere sight. The feeling that washed through the cockpit was one of being perceived, analyzed, and dismissed. With the perception came a pressure behind the eyes, a whisper of static in the mind. Jason felt a spike of a headache,
Tank felt a sudden, profound chill. Lainey saw, for a fraction of a second, a flash of hateful, geometric constellations absent from any star chart. The eye held them in its gaze for a long, silent moment. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion that was utterly alien and terrifyingly intelligent, it blinked. In that silent, abyssal moment, the crushing scale of their enemy, its age, its intelligence, its raw power, settled over the crew of the Manta. Even Jason was speechless, his hands frozen on the controls. Aboard the Rhinari vessel, Xavian watched the live feed from the human submersible. When the eye filled the screen, he made a soft, choking sound and sank to his knees, his rigid piety replaced by a primal, holy terror. The sight was a revelation, a confirmation of every dreadful verse in his sacred texts, and the fact that the humans were not just witnessing it, but actively provoking it was an act of madness so profound it approached a new kind of divinity. Back on the bridge of the Manta, the spell broke. Jason recalibrated the thrusters, his usual chatter gone, his movements sharp and direct. Tank methodically rechecked her explosive charge yields, her jaw set in a line as hard as her calloused knuckles. The image of the eye was burned into all their minds, a silent, sapphire judgment. Lainey unbuckled her harness and stood, the slight sway of the sub the only motion in the cockpit.
I need 2 minutes. Jason, you have the con. Keep us at a safe distance. Hold its attention.
Aye, Commander, he said, his voice tight. She moved to the small aft compartment, a tiny, closet-sized space between racks of emergency equipment and CO2 scrubbers. The door slid shut behind her, plunging her into near darkness. The only light, the faint green glow of a single status indicator. Alone, she leaned her forehead against the cold metal bulkhead. For the first time, her unflappable calm cracked. A tremor shook her, a deep, resonant fear that left her skin cold. The weight of the world, of the defiant bonfires, of the global toast, of the trust of 8 billion souls, settled on her shoulders like a physical mass. The alien intelligence in that eye had stripped away the layers of commander, of SEAL, of scientist, and left only a woman, small and fragile, staring into an abyss that had stared back with cold, ancient comprehension. Her breath caught in her throat. Her heart hammered against her ribs. For one terrifying second, she felt the insane urge to scream at Jason, to run, to flee to the surface and never look back. The fear was a living thing, coiling in her gut, whispering they were insects trying to lasso a hurricane. She closed her eyes. She took one deep, shaky breath, the scrubbed air tasting thin and metallic. Then another. She met the fear. She acknowledged its presence. She faced it and then began to pack it down, compressing it layer by layer, transforming its chaotic energy into a cold, hard fuel. Her expression, unseen in the dark, hardened from terror into resolve. Her spine straightened. She rolled her shoulders back, a gesture of defiance against the crushing weight of the deep. When she walked back onto the bridge, the door hissing open behind her, she looked as if she had just returned from a coffee break. Her voice, when she spoke, was perfectly steady, the calm center of the coming storm.
Report.
Jason glanced back at her, a flicker of concern in his eyes that quickly vanished. It's watching us. Sonar shows its appendages are deploying. I think the staring contest is over.
Good,
Lainey said, buckling herself back into her command chair.
time to jig the lure. Take us into the trench. Let's dance.
The eye focused. The dance began. Jason, his focus now sharpened by a healthy dose of mortal terror, pushed the manta to its absolute limits. He was performing. He sent the sub into a spiraling dive, plunging into a colossal undersea canyon whose walls were being actively reshaped by the Leviathan's passage. He dodged and weaved through colossal rock formations, making their movements erratic, tantalizing, a shiny lure jigged for a predator of staggering proportions.
Closer, Jason,
Lainey urged, her eyes on the tactical display that showed the Leviathan's projected movements.
We need it to commit.
Any closer and we'll be a stain on its big, stupid eyeball, he shot back, but he nudged the stick, bringing them perilously near to the shifting canyon wall. A tentacle, smaller than the first but still the size of a freight train, slammed down from above. It missed them by inches, the pressure wave it generated sending the manta tumbling end over end. A landslide of rock and silt cascaded towards them.
Tank!
Lainey yelled.
On it!
Tank replied, her voice deadpan. Strapped into the weapons station, her thumbs swept across the targeting array, locking onto 4 points in the debris field and firing the charges in a clean 1, 2, 3, 4 sequence. The detonations blasted a clear path through the falling debris. The concussions rattled the sub so violently that Jason's teeth clicked together.
A little turbulence,
Tank noted, as if commenting on the weather. They cleared the rock slide and shot out of the canyon into a vast open abyss. But the Leviathan was done playing games. It changed tactics. Instead of chasing them, it began to move its main body in a slow, ponderous circle. The water around them began to shift, to pull. Malik's voice crackled over the comm from the Odyssey.
Lainey, you better get out of there. It's creating a whirlpool, a gyre. The scale is... My God, the gravitational models are going haywire.
The Manta's navigation screen, the current indicators all turned red and pointed towards a single spot a few miles away. They were caught. The pull was too strong. Jason had the thrusters at maximum overload, but they were still being dragged sideways into a slow, inexorable spiral.
I can't break free!
Jason grunted, sweat beading on his forehead as he fought the controls.
The current's got us!
Alarms blared as the sub was pulled faster and faster into the spiral, heading for the crushing pressures at the center of the vortex. Hull integrity warnings flashed across the screen in angry red letters. On the Rhinari ship, Xavian watched the telemetry from the human vessel. He saw their vector of descent, the powerlessness of their engines against the gyre's pull. He placed a hand over his heart. "It is over," he said to the silent bridge crew. "The Devourer claims its tithe. They challenged the holy brine. They challenged a god, and they have been found wanting. Let their sacrifice be a lesson." Aboard the Odyssey, Malik was a storm of motion, his hands darting between 3 different consoles, inputting commands, cross-referencing data, and rerouting power, all while muttering complex fluid dynamics equations to himself.
No, fighting it, that's wrong, all wrong,
he mumbled. Then his eyes went wide. He slammed a fist on his console, not in frustration, but in revelation.
Of course! It's a gravity well combined with a whirlpool. The rotational velocity and the gravitational gradient, the center is stable. It's a natural slingshot. Jason, stop fighting it. Cut the main engines and use the current. Ride it!
Inside the groaning, creaking manta, Jason looked at Lainey. She met his gaze and gave a single, sharp nod. Trust.
You owe me a beer for this, Malik! A whole brewery!
Jason yelled into the comm. He slapped a large, red-covered switch. The The roar of the main thrusters died, replaced by the terrifying sound of groaning metal and the rush of water. The Mansa lurched and was pulled violently into the vortex's heart. Jason's hands danced over the maneuvering jets, firing bursts to angle their descent, using the current instead of fighting it. For one terrifying, breathtaking moment, they were at the absolute center of the gyre, the eye of the hurricane, surrounded by a solid, spinning wall of black water. The pressure alarms screamed. Then, just as Malik predicted, they were through. The vortex's immense rotational energy caught them and flung them out the other side. They shot out of the whirlpool like a bullet from a gun, rocketing away at a velocity their own engines could never achieve. The slingshot maneuver worked. It also put them on a direct, high-speed course for the target zone, with a very angry god right behind them.
Malik!
Lainey said, her voice strained from the G-forces.
Light the candle! Lighting it!
Malik yelled back. On the surface, the wormhole generator, now gorged with power from the kinetic siphons, activated. A wavering, unstable tear in reality opened between the waves. It looked like a vertical pool of liquid starlight, crackling with raw energy, its immense gravitational pull turning the sky above it into a lens. The Leviathan, enraged at its prey's audacious escape, saw the wavering maw and followed. The final chase began. It became a gauntlet. The Leviathan lashed out with dozens of smaller, faster appendages, each one striking with pinpoint accuracy. The water became a forest of whipping, armored limbs. Jason was no longer just a pilot, he was an artist in a deadly ballet. He dodged, weaved, and barrel-rolled the manta through the storm of tentacles, his every move a testament to a lifetime spent mastering three-dimensional space. A tentacle tip grazed their port side, peeling away a section of plating with a hideous screech of tearing metal. Another slammed down just ahead of them, and Jason had to pull the sub into a vertical climb that threatened to shear the wings off.
He's hurting us!
Jason shouted, his knuckles wide on the controls.
He's trying to box us in! He's not the only one,
Lainey said, her eyes on the target coordinates.
We're in the capture zone, Malik. It's time. Fire the tethers! Firing tethers!
Malik screamed into his comm, his face illuminated by the glow of his console. Deep on the seabed, the 6 skyscraper-sized siphon arrays reconfigured. What had been energy collectors now became massive winches. With a sound felt more than heard, 6 huge magnetic grappling tethers, each as thick as a subway train, fired upwards through the water. They slammed into the Leviathan's hide with thunderous metallic impacts. Bright blue energy flared as they latched on, their magnetic fields burrowing deep into the creature's armored plating.
We've got him on the line!
Tank yelled, a rare note of savage excitement in her voice. Her hands moved over her own console, modulating the power flow to the tethers, turning them into immense fishing lines. The tethers groaned under the strain, cables as thick as bridge supports stretching taut as they began to subtly, inexorably guide the struggling behemoth toward the shimmering maw of the wormhole. The Leviathan thrashed in fury, its rage directed at these new, infuriating anchors. It focused its immense strength on one of the tethers. A high-pitched, metallic scream erupted, and on Malik's board, Siphon Array 4 went from green to blinding red.
Tether 4 is snapping!
He shouted.
The backlash is overloading the siphon!
The tether snapped. The kinetic energy stored within it released in a catastrophic backlash. The entire siphon array below exploded in a silent, brilliant flash of light, turning a skyscraper of metal into a cloud of shrapnel. They were losing their grip.
They were now meters from the wormhole's event horizon, so close they could see the distorted, alien starlight of the empty universe beyond. But the Leviathan sensed the trap. It dug in, its titanic muscles straining against the 5 remaining tethers and the portal's relentless gravitational pull. Its energy output became wild, erratic, causing the wormhole itself to flicker and destabilize.
"It's fighting the pull!" Jason yelled. "We're not gonna make it!"
On the seabed, the last functional piece of the ancient precursor prison lay in wait. A massive binding array, designed to deliver one final, powerful gravitic pulse to push the creature through if it ever came to this. A failsafe. Malik's fingers danced across his keyboard, trying to activate it remotely. An error message flashed on his screen, stark and final. Command failed. Signal jammed.
"Laney!"
he cried, his voice cracking with desperation.
"The final binder! I can't get the signal through. The Leviathan's thrashing. It's generating a localized space-time distortion. It's jamming all remote frequencies. The precursors must have anticipated it. The only thing that can get through the interference is a shielded hardline. The manual override on site."
There was no hesitation, no debate. This was the moment her entire life, her unique combination of skills, had created. She was the only person on the planet who understood the precursor technology well enough to even attempt it.
"I'm going out,"
she said, her voice utterly calm as she unbuckled her harness.
"Tank, you're on ordnance. Give me some cover. Jason, hold its attention. Keep those lines taut. Malik, you're my eyes. Talk me through it."
Laney sealed the helmet of her hardened deep space atmospheric dive suit. The hiss of the seals a final, intimate sound in the roaring chaos. The Manta's ventral airlock opened, and she was immediately assaulted by currents that could shred steel. She fired a tether gun from her wrist, the grapple biting into the sea floor, and pulled herself out of the sub, hand over hand, moving towards the glowing, collapsing ruins of the precursor structure. The water was a disorienting soup of debris, swirling silt, and wavering energy shed by the struggling Leviathan. It was like performing surgery in a blender.
"Okay, Malik, I'm at the outer ring,"
she grunted, her breath ragged with exertion.
"Which way?" "Follow the main energy conduit. It should still glow faintly blue,"
Malik's voice directed, tinny in her helmet.
"It leads to the central control nexus. Be careful, Laney. The whole structure is unstable."
Guided by Malik's frantic instructions and her own innate understanding of the alien architecture, Laney navigated the collapsing ruins. She dodged falling pillars of techno-organic material and swam through clouds of sparkling, corrosive energy. Finally, she saw it. The manual override. A massive, techno-organic lever system. A series of translucent rods set into a socket that sparked violently with failing energy. She rappelled down to the control panel, landing heavily on the vibrating platform.
"I'm here. The primary relay looks fused. It's a solid mass of melted metal." "Damn it! There should be a backup. A secondary power conduit you can engage manually."
Laney scanned the console, her eyes tracing the lines of alien circuitry.
"I see it, but the housing is sealed." "Then you'll have to open it,"
Malik said, his voice grim. Using the prying tool on her suit's gauntlet, Laney jammed it into a seam in the alien machine. With a Herculean effort that made the servos in her suit whine in protest, she tore the panel open. Inside, a chaotic nest of sparking, living cables writhed.
"Okay, I'm in,"
she panted.
"Which one?" "The thickest one, the one pulsing with a dull red light. You have to pull it free and jam it into the empty port on the right."
She reached into the sparking machinery. The moment her armored glove touched the cable, her suit's power system screamed a warning. A massive arc of raw precursor energy bypassed her flesh, surging directly into the suit, seeking a ground. The advanced materials shunted trillions of joules away from her body, but the feedback through the gauntlet's control interface was instantaneous and absolute. Her vision whited out with agonizing pain. It felt like every nerve ending in her arm was being rewritten by the alien voltage. Through the pain, she heard Jason yelling her name over the comms, heard Tank reporting another tether was about to fail. She heard the groans of the Leviathan and the shriek of stressed metal. She grit her teeth, a guttural roar of defiance tearing from her throat. With her last ounce of strength, she ripped the conduit free and slammed it home into the backup port. The array flashed. A silent, blinding pulse of blue-white light erupted. A massive gravitic wave, the last vengeful ghost of the precursors, slammed into the Leviathan. The pulse, combined with the wormhole's relentless pull and the strain of the 4 remaining tethers, was too much. The Leviathan was lifted, its struggles suddenly futile. As it was dragged backwards through the portal, it unleashed one final attack. The mental static they had felt before, the hateful geometry, became a deafening, focused scream of neurological interference. A wave of alien rage and disbelief slammed into the minds of every human on the mission, a psychic tantrum of a god being evicted from its home. The last thrashing tentacle disappeared into the vortex of starlight. The wormhole, its power source now gone, collapsed with a deafening implosion of sound and light that shook the very ocean to its core. And then, silence. The currents died. The unnatural waves on the surface vanished. The storm was over. The only sound in Lainey's helmet was the ragged rasp of her own breathing. Tank, her face set in grim resolve, expertly piloted a small remote drone through the now calm water. Its manipulator arms gently secured Lainey's unconscious, drifting form and guided her back to the Manta's waiting airlock. Jason, his bravado stripped away, flew the battered, dented submersible back to the Odyssey with the slow, careful touch of a man carrying a priceless, broken treasure. On the bridge of the mothership, the exhausted crew watched the Manta being secured in the moon pool. For a long moment, only the quiet hum of machinery filled the air. Then, one of the techs started to clap, a slow, hesitant sound. Another joined in. Soon the entire bridge was a roar of cheering, shouting, and weeping, the sound of a species that had stared into the abyss and made the abyss blink first. Lainey woke up coughing, the taste of salt and superheated metal in her mouth. The light was soft, the sounds muted. She was in the Odyssey's medbay. Jason was slumped in a chair by her bedside, fast asleep, his face smudged with grease and exhaustion. Her first words were a croaked whisper.
Did we get it?
Jason's head snapped up, his eyes bleary. A slow, tired, triumphant grin spread across his face. We bagged it and tagged it, Commander. Operation Big Fish was a success. She tried to sit up, but a sharp, aching pain in her left arm stopped her. The ship's doctor gently pushed her back down. Easy, Commander. You took a hell of a jolt. The suit shunted almost all of it, but the feedback was intense. Lainey looked down. The sleeve of her undersuit had been cut away. From her shoulder to her fingertips, a beautiful, terrifying fractal pattern was etched into her skin. It looked like a bolt of blue lightning captured under her flesh.
a permanent, intricate scar, a Lichtenberg figure.
The energy seems to have followed the neural pathways in your arm,
the doctor said, his voice full of wonder.
We've seen nothing like it.
A badge of honor, marking her as the woman who had touched a god's cage and won. She looked at the scar, then at Jason's exhausted, smiling face, and a single, weary tear traced a path through the grime on her cheek. On the bridge of his ship, orbiting high above the now peaceful planet, Xavian stood. He stared at the placid, blue ocean on his main view screen, an image that no longer inspired horror, but a deep and profound awe. His aide, Niala, approached him, her steps hesitant.
"Ambassador?"
she began, her voice soft.
"What should we write in the logs? What do we tell our people? That the prophecies were false? That the Devourer was no god?"
Xavian watched as the tiny, scarred human vessel, the Odyssey, began its slow journey home under a newly peaceful sky, the ochre stain in the atmosphere already beginning to fade. He was silent for a long time, the rigid certainty of his faith, the foundation of his entire civilization, shattered and gone. In its place grew something new, something terrifying, something magnificent. Finally, he spoke, his voice stripped of all arrogance, of all pity, filled only with a deep, resonant wonder.
No, the prophecy was true. The Devourer has been judged.
He turned to his aide, his large black eyes wide with a new kind of revelation, a new and terrible gospel.
And it has been found wanting.
He turned back to the view of the blue world, a cradle that had proven to be a crucible.
"Write this in the logs,"
he commanded, his voice clear and strong.
"The age of gods is over. The age of man has begun."